Forbes India, Tycoons of Tomorrow, presented by Neom.
Good evening to all of you. It's going to be an interesting discussion. Would you rather be a founder or a first or a third generation or a second generation family business owner? Well, so let's begin by talking about one of the tenets of any business, which is the hunger, the fire in the belly. Ashwin, would you say that there is a differentiator between a first-gen entrepreneur or a family businessman when it comes to this particular aspect?
My experience is a first-generation entrepreneur, so I'll speak for first-generation entrepreneurs. I won't presume to talk about family businesses.
Yes.
But as a first-generation entrepreneur, everything that you're doing rides on that one company, right? So let me give an example. If you're Bhavish Agarwal and you started Ola Electric, and your first product catches fire, you may also be Tata Motors with the Nano, which also catches fire. But one of those founders' ass is literally on fire. Because if that company goes down, that's entire legacy, entire hard work. There are investors you depend on. You don't have a conglomerate to draw cash on, etc. So I do believe that you are more hungry. It's riskier. It's kind of like an immigrant in a country, right? You have to make it work.
Right.
But like I said, I speak for first-generation entrepreneurs. I can't presume that second generation, third generation are not hungry.
But Ashwin, over there, I would say that not many companies, even if family businesses, have a conglomerate kind of structure. They may have just one product as well, and they can also be in a do-die situation as well.
Like I said.
Right. All right. So point taken, but Kairav, tell us about your experience. A lot of people envy the second and third generation family business owners. But I'm sure it also comes with great expectations.
So most people think second generation, third generation entrepreneurs as spoiled brats, like, born in money, free to do whatever they want. They don't have anyone to hold them accountable for, but that's not the case. I categorize second generation entrepreneurs as there are two types of them. One is you are born into money. You've been raised with people around you, with, servants, maids. You've been born into money. You've been born into sort of a legacy. And you have a very different view of your business. Then you have a second generation which basically sees their parents slog it out and sees the ups and downs of their parents as they build their empire. And, I call them generation 1.5 because most of the times they value the efforts that their parents have put into the business,
right,
and have seen their parents struggle, often have grown up without one of the parents around.
Yes.
Because they're very busy building their business. They already have a lot going on in their life. So it's very different, depends on what kind of a second generation you are.
right.
I belong to generation 1.5. Okay, I've seen my dad slog it out.
Yes.
We were bankrupt in 2002. We got a notice to evacuate our home on Diwali 2002. I was 14 years old. So I've seen him slog it out. I've seen him struggle. I've seen him fail.
Yes.
We got listed in 2007 when I was 19 years old. So I've seen the whole journey.
Right.
And, I value the journey, and I share the same hunger for growth, and I share the same passion for the business as he does.
All right, so great story there, Kairav. Let me also get Sudhakar's view on this. So Sudhakar, a lot of people think that the family business owners have a launch pad already ready, right? But I'm sure that there are a lot of good aspects or benefits of having your own freedom when you are a founder of your own company.
Well, my shoe size fits me just fine. I don't have a large shoes to fill. If you're a second generation entrepreneur, you have large shoes to fill in all probability. Otherwise, you don't even call it a second generation because the first generation would have failed, right? Yeah. So in that sense, it weighs slightly on your shoulders. You don't have a legacy to live upon. So you are free to fall, get up, and then get again running. You don't have legacy issues, as you call it. So I would say it is what I call a founder's freedom.
Right.
The freedom to experiment, the freedom not being afraid to fail,
Right.
not having to live up to the expectations of people around you. That is, I think, is the advantage of first generation entrepreneur. The second generation might have an edge in terms of raising the resources because they have a track record and the family is more tuned towards it.
Yes.
They have seen, they were risk takers in that generation, so they've seen the pros and cons of that, so they would be more aware of it. Unlike a first generation entrepreneur who come from middle class backgrounds, where there is an element of scare in the family because no one has ventured into the woods, right?
Right. So risk-taking ability, that's a very important aspect of any business. Ashwin, jump in on this particular aspect. You think that the risk ability is stunted when you're all alone, you're a lone ranger?
Well, I'll speak from personal experience. So I just finished my MBA. I was coming back to India. I was going to start this, my first startup. And my parents, they were professionals. They were not entrepreneurs, not from business per se. They were like, why can't you be like your brother, take up a full-time job, pay off your student loan? Why have all of this? And in their mind, they were envisaging debt collection agents standing outside the front door, knocking on their door, etc. So risk-taking ability, it was a lonely, solitary journey.
Yes.
But in some sense, what I had, though, was the freedom to do what I want.
Yes.
My first startup was in travel. My second startup was in education. I don't know if I have it in me to do a third one, but it could probably be in some other field. I'm not bound or constrained by preconceived notions that my family imposes on me. So like everything in life, pros and cons.
But what about the finances, the entire resources, the infrastructure already ready, and if you have the interest to just build on that?
You're asking this at a very good time because just last week, there was a large industrial house that said, Ashwin, we'll give you 2,500 crores, come and build our education business. This is like fifth generation, but very large
There's a headline story going, by the way.
I don't know about that.
M&A.
And then I came out of the meeting, declined, so there's no headline, but said, oh my God, I wish somebody gave that to me when I started 10 years back.
Yeah.
But my family was asking me to take a full-time job.
Right, I'll have a side chat with you because that same company can be going to another company which is facing a lot of, negative press right now, and they may be also ready.
You know the name of the company?
No. Okay.
That is scary.
So jokes aside, but Kairav, tell us about one particular aspect, which is the sensitivity that goes into the business because you're working with the same family members, and then there are emotions and relationships to be maintained when you go back home. Is that a very fine balance and a very tough burden on the youngest member of the family in the business?
See, whenever you have multiple family members involved in a business, there's going to be clash of egos. And one needs to understand if there are differences at work. Me and my dad fight all the time. So if there are differences at work, you leave those differences at work and you go back home and then you enjoy time with your family. The day you start bringing your differences at work, you bring them home and then it affects your family life, is when you go back to the drawing board and then you sit with your family council and then you decide where to draw the line, who to allocate what, and how to restructure power and how to manage the hierarchy of the organization. People who don't, family businesses who don't align that, and things change, okay? You have first generation, second, third, fourth, things change. More and more family members keep, joining the business. So this thing needs to be worked upon on a regular basis, every decade or so that, your business is functioning smoothly without any sort of, politics or any sort of differences between the, promoters.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a tough one to really manage. Sudhakar, what are the main challenges apart from the risk and that one decision of venturing all alone as a founder? What has been the toughest and the biggest challenge you think you have faced as a founder?
I think the first and foremost challenge is the mindset, because resources, when you are an entrepreneur, you know how to hustle and you know how to manage things to be more resourceful as such. But I think the biggest challenge is the mindset.
Yes.
The atmosphere around you is not very conducive for entrepreneurship. Have you ever seen a person in India putting that failed venture in his resume? I don't think so. They say there's a gap or something, or took a sabbatical. You cover it up with fancy words and all this stuff, right? So I think the society at large is very risk averse, and they see these fancy headlines of these unicorns and all this stuff, and they forget the toil in building the company. And mind you, when I started my entrepreneurial journey 18 years back, straight out of IIM Calcutta, the ecosystem hasn't really evolved. The venture capital is much nascent these days.
Yes.
And remember, in those days, the word businessman and entrepreneur were used synonymously. There is no difference between a businessman and an entrepreneur as such. So I think that is the biggest challenge. Everything else can be managed.
All right, so great you mentioned venture capital. Ashwin, do you think that there is a lack of guidance also for the founders, and that already existing legacy mindset and intel which comes in a business house, that really lacks? And we have seen the pitfalls of that as well. The lessons have been learned by the startup industry in terms of even diluting their equity at a very early stage in the last wave that we saw.
Well, definitely so, but that is also kind of balanced by the scale of ambition, right? I think you may sometimes see in family businesses the aversion to dilute, aversion to take external capital, because then now you have not just the family, but a third and a fourth voice at the table. And those dynamics sometimes, I mean, they can be navigated, they tend to be challenged. Yes. I remember a conversation, I was fundraising, it was in Bangalore, a well-known firm. For the first 7 years of Eruditus' existence, we were profitable. Then we raised venture capital money, and then we were never been profitable again. That's a joke, guys. You can laugh. But the point is, when I met them to raise capital for the first time, which was after 7 years, they asked me this question: are you a promoter or an entrepreneur? So I was a little puzzled. I said, what's the difference? They said, no, you built a company. It's gone from 0 to about 100 crores, 0 to 100 crores. It's profitable. You've not raised outside capital. You're not an entrepreneur, you're a promoter. And see, that mindset is something that I think has changed significantly. But there's a lot more work to be done in going there. That an entrepreneur somehow has to take money, dilute. I mean, take that great example, Zerodha, etc., which I think are breaking that mindset.
Yes. All right, not just in equity dilution, good that you raise this difference between entrepreneur and promoter. Do you agree with the view that even though startup founders are new age company founders and fairly young and new in mindset, have also in the past made some mistakes and behaved like very old age promoters as well?
Every startup founder has made mistakes. Why only new age and younger? I have made mistakes. Last 12 months, if I look back, there's so many I wish I didn't do. So every starter, everybody in this room, as great as we all may be, have all made mistakes. The difference is how fast you learn and how cheap or costly that mistake is. You know, there was a famous Stanford professor who said, look, if I have a first-time entrepreneur with a great idea, but I have a failed second-time entrepreneur, 100 times out of 100, I'll invest in the second-time entrepreneur. Why? Because they have the wisdom of failure. Failure is a great great teacher.
Yes, and that's another point even Sudhakar mentioned, the ability to fail and bounce back.
As a first-generation entrepreneur, you can learn so much from your failure at somebody else's money. As second-generation entrepreneur, it's your own family's money.
Oh, that's a free ride. So Kairav, this is a very important aspect. You know, you need to have your own learnings with failures. Do you think that the ability to fail is now restricted in family businesses? You're not allowed to have any failure because there are just so many decision makers.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. If that was the case, a lot of family businesses that have gone belly up wouldn't have. See, the thing is that it all depends on the first generation who's driving the business, right? How much of a free hand do they give you? That
was exactly my question.
Yeah. So, you know, there are people, like my father doesn't question, you know, whenever I take a decision or whenever I want to do something new or think about something out of the box, he always supports the idea.
Yeah.
But then you have a lot of rigid first generation promoters who are scared to fail, okay? And I understand why they are scared to fail, because they've built the business and they've invested so much behind it, and maybe they might have seen a few small failures growing that business, and it generally makes them scared to lose it all.
Yes.
And they somehow feel that the next generation, their kids, grandkids, are not well equipped to take decisions, and they just can't let it go. And when that happens, you raise a second, third generation of promoters who've never taken a decision for themselves. And come one day when the first generation promoter passes away or retires or whatnot,
Yes.
and then you have these 40, 50-year-old second generation people trying
Yes.
to run a business who don't know what it takes to, take a decision or to fail or to take a
Succession
risk.
planning and creating the next gen leaders, that could be one of the constraints. But I want to come to an important point here. As the standards of corporate governance is really getting heightened in India, the investors want to look at it. Even the equity market participants now want to look at it. So it's not just that you want a PE investor, that you have to have great corporate governance. Do you think that the scrutiny and the burden to really prove yourself has really gone up in the future generations of family businesses?
Yeah, so not only your investors, your shareholders or your potential shareholders, but also your employees, your family, people around you, they're always scrutinizing you, and they always see, what is this guy up to? How does he work? What decisions does he make? How does he make them? Does he have the same, decision-making abilities that his father has or his mother has? So you always, under scrutiny, and it's kind of, when you are a second generation promoter, especially in the corporate governance standards of today, you always have so many people you are answerable to, and you are always something to prove to everyone around you, because it's not just about leading a company anymore. They're not looking for leaders, they're looking for people who can
Yes.
lead well.
Yes.
There were leaders in family businesses, but now they're thinking about, is the family business, is the second generation, third generation able to lead well? And that is the key thing.
All right, so not as rosy a picture when it comes to the next generation in a family business. All right, and so Ashwin, the final question, freedom versus the infrastructure that is already provided, or the launch pad which is easily available. What would you rather choose even today?
It's a flawed question, because truly, if you're born into a family business,
You don't have a choice.
you don't have a choice. And today, as a first-time entrepreneur, how do I become a second-generation family business? So you're dealt a hand. I always believe this is like life. You're dealt a hand, play to the best of your ability.
Well
Freedom
said.
and all is all faltu ka discussion hai. What you have, you make the best of it.
All right, well said. Kairav, hand on heart, if you had the ability and the freedom to have your own business, would you have still chosen that?
Yeah, I would do it by myself. If I had an option to, I would start something on my own, because the ownership feeling that you get when
Right.
you make something, you'd never get it as a second generation promoter.
Freedom over all the infrastructure that is there. Sudhakar has already said that freedom is the choice thing for him. Thank you so much, Ashwin, Kairav, as well as Sudhakar, for joining us. And thank you so much to the audience for patiently listening in. Thank you.
Forbes India, Tycoons of Tomorrow, presented by Neom.